Dennis Weiss, Eagle Communications. Welcome to our town. We're at Abilene Memorial Health Systems in our brand new lovely hospital. Have the director, Harold Courtois, sitting here with me, and we're going to talk about the most complex thing in any small town, which is healthcare. It's the most complex thing anywhere, healthcare of humans. My humble opinion, feel free to disagree. But right now in Kansas, we're talking about what to do with healthcare. And it's called Medicaid expansion when you Google it, or in the news. And I ask you, after the Abilene Town Hall with Representative Barker, Senator Hardy, and Congressman Marshall, Harold, it sounds like you know what you're talking about on this subject. Will you talk to me about it? And you said yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Very happy to. All
right. Okay. Let's first establish something I'm very happy about. I've had healthcare here last week, did some physical therapy downstairs with that physical therapy team in that beautiful new facility.
Yeah.
And looked out the window at those blooming trees out there in that space. I'm so grateful Abilene has a new hospital. I'm so proud of our community for investing their trust in all of us, that healthcare is important to Abilene. And so well done, all of you who labored many years. You know, we have Elgin sitting over there as our audience, live audience of one. So if he breaks out in raucous laughter and cheers, it's Elgin.
Elgin is my filter. Yeah.
Okay. So, Harold, Medicaid, Medicare expansion.
Medicaid expansion.
Medicaid expansion.
Which
you
is
got to get the word right.
Or also called CanCare expansion.
Okay. So why is it important to Abilene Memorial Hospital?
Well, it's important to Abilene because we see a lot of people come through our ER, Dennis, that are seeking emergent care, but what they really need is preventive care. And the emergency room is the most expensive type of care that there is.
Yes.
And I would love to see those people be on preventive care, use the ER less, because it's not only expensive to them, but it's expensive for us, and it's expensive to insurance companies to actually cover those people through the ER. It would be much less expensive if we could do it in a way through preventive care in the doctor's office.
Okay, so we're going to try to break down into normal conversation for the people who aren't here what we're talking about, because I may think I know what I'm talking about and you do know what you're talking about, but the words may not line up.
Well, I think I do.
Okay, so you talked emergent care and preventative care, and we use the word emergency room. So when I've gone into emergency room, I think maybe one time I went in without horse manure on my body somewhere, right? So that's an emergency room visit for the Weiss family, is when something went horribly wrong.
Right.
Well, one time I went in there when something went pretty wrong. It had nothing to do with an accident too, right? It just had an emergency care situation. So that's an emergency in my mind.
Right.
All right? But it's also the place that's open for business and health care for anybody who walks in about 7 by 24. And that is what we see in the marketplace. There are many folks walking in because they have put up with whatever they've put up with as long as they can, and it's Saturday night.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's another reason that some of them do that. The ones that, the 150,000 Kansans that fall in the gap, they make too much for CanCare, and they make too little to be able to buy insurance, use the emergency room as their clinic. And a lot of times it is emergent care. It's an emergency because they haven't been able to get preventive care, and they get so sick that now they have to come into the emergency room because it's an EMTALA issue, which is an emergent care type of regulation that requires them to go to the emergency room because of the significance of the illness that they're having at the time. The reason they do that is they can't afford care, and they're proud enough that they don't want to not be able to pay their bills, but when there's an emergency, they don't have a choice.
Right. Okay. We're going to pause on that a minute, and then we're going to explain the proposal that's in front of our legislators and government in Topeka, and then we'll work back into the real issue, which is taking care of people. So what's on the table for Medicaid expansion in Kansas?
Yeah, Medicaid expansion, or CanCare expansion, whichever you want to call it, is on the table for Kansans. It's already passed the House, and now it's in the Senate, and the question is, will they bring it to a vote on the Senate floor? I think that the people are owed a vote whether you agree or disagree with the proposal, it should be voted
Right.
upon by the representatives of the people.
Kind of why they went there, right, to vote?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we elected them, was to go there and vote.
Sure.
And I think for one or two people to hold this vote off the floor is not fair, and it's not representative of the people that sent them
Okay.
to the state legislature, whether it's the Senate or the House.
What does the proposal say in common words?
The proposal in common words would say that for 150,000 Kansas approximately, that make up to 138% of poverty level.
And that number ends up being 17,600, something like that? Is that close to the number?
Pretty close.
That's the level that
Yeah.
this qualifies?
Right,
Yeah.
somewhere
Somewhere in there.
about there, yes,
Okay.
sir. That they would receive care benefits like those that are at 100% of poverty level, or at that $17,000 level and below. And so
Okay.
they would receive benefits as well.
And we think there's 150,000 Kansans in that?
We believe there's
Yeah.
150,000.
Okay.
And those people then would be able to receive preventive care, which I think is really important. They would be required, just like they are in care, to declare a physician so that they have that type of care and they have the oversight. And I think it's really important for them because many of those people are not healthy now. And we can get into that a little bit later, but I think at this point, that's what we're looking at with care. And the approximate cost, you know, if we were going to do it yet this year, is about $14.2 million. But we know that the analysis shows that a net revenue would occur for the state of Kansas, and Kansas could afford an expanded type of Medicaid.
Okay, one of the complicated parts of this discussion is who pays for what. I know the general public has very little grip on who pays for what. So we're going to try to help, you're going to try to help, and
Yeah.
I'm going to nod wisely. So who pays which pieces if this passes for that 150,000 people? How did their health care bills get paid out of what funds?
Okay, so right now we currently have sent out of our state taxes from our taxpayers in Kansas, $3.2 billion. Now that money, if we had it expanded Medicaid, would be a match back to us that we have lost to other states because we don't have expanded Medicaid. So the taxpayers of the state are the ones that foot the bill for expanded Medicaid. The thing that I've always used is that in communities we're weaker because you have a limited population, but statewide together we're stronger in being able to pay those taxes and be able to get that back to the people of Kansas. But in the first 3 years under the current ACA rules, we would be reimbursed 100% of the cost of Medicaid expansion. Following that, we currently are in a position where we pay about 43% of Medicaid and the government pays 57%. Both of those models cash flow, just so you know. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So a caveat that we both know, that laws are made, laws are changed, things go away. But we have to make decisions in the environment we live.
Right.
And so where we live today, what exists is what you just said.
Correct,
in funding.
57-43. Yes, sir.
And I think you can disagree with me if you'd like, but I think that radical change in healthcare is going to be hard to do again in the nation. We did it once. And I think people are appropriately afraid of radical change in a different direction.
Yeah.
I think we'll see gradual change. So all of that to say, I have little doubt that those numbers that you just related in percentage shares are going to change drastically no matter who's in Congress.
It's very possible.
And who's in the president's seat, because it's just, at this again, it's 1/6 of the U.S. economy. It's just too big to change too fast again.
Yeah.
Surely people are reasonable enough to work that out, but neither one of us has much to say about that.
No, we don't. One thing that I would say is that we've had Medicare since way back in the early 20th century.
Right.
And Medicare has gone through all these gyrations just the same as like we can't afford that, but it's never gone away.
Right.
And just like Medicaid has also existed. And so Medicaid is not going to go away. The question is, what's the solution for Kansans?
Okay. So I'm going to try to speak to several groups of audiences I know are out in our demographics, right? So all of the money we're talking about from the federal government or from Kansas is our money. It's always our money.
Correct.
Taxes go up and we get some back in different programs. But currently, that line item on our payroll stub every week, that's not going to change.
No.
It's still going away. If we want that line item changed, then we have work to do in Washington, right? Not in Kansas, really.
Right.
So that money is leaving Kansas today, and there's not much we can do about that. However, there appears to be a choice on what we can do by getting some of it back appropriately addressed with health care on it.
Correct.
And I think that's what you're telling me.
Absolutely. Many of those dollars would come back to Kansas in the form of Medicaid expansion, because right now they're going out anyway. This isn't a savings to the state of Kansas. This is money back as a result of our expense for Kansas that's going out of the state. You know, there are quite a few jobs that would be created with Medicaid expansion as well. I think it's estimated by the Forestry Service estimating group that it would bring about 3,800 new jobs to Kansas. And here's the reason why, is that people would get preventive health. Many of those that are sick that can't work would become healthy and be able to work. And there's some other jobs that are created around the expansion of Medicaid with people that are taking care of those people as well. But I can't tell you exactly how they compute that. It's a complicated formula, but 3,800 jobs would be created in the state.
So a not too pleasant aside, we recently, a couple of years ago, were going to apply for a government grant loan, depending on how well written your grant was and who you are, frankly. But I can tell you how they calculated the jobs index there, because we were required to calculate the increase in jobs, and they so kindly gave us a formula to do it. All you had to do was take the money you're going to spend and divide it by $92,600, I think it was, and that's how many jobs you were going to create. That was the calculation. That made no sense, and I rejected it offhand. What we know, though, about this proposal, we're doing this to increase health care to people. When you give health care to people, people have to do that.
Right.
And if we're increasing the amount of health care upwards in our local market, there will be people who have to do that. There will have to be things done. That's common sense that there has job expansion opportunities here.
Yeah, we know for every healthcare job that outside of that, 0.91 jobs is used to support healthcare. And so if we've got 90-some thousand jobs in Kansas with healthcare, which we do, about 95,000, then we know that there's around 84 to 85,000 jobs that exist around that healthcare industry. And that's really important to Kansas.
Yeah.
But I think the critical thing for me is people having access to health care. People do deserve access to health care. How we come up with that is a Kansas solution, so I'm not going to get into whether they have a right to health care, but they have a right to access to health care. And if some of these frontier hospitals, rural hospitals continue to go down, we've already lost 5 since 2010, then we would be looking at reduced access to health care. That's the reality. If they still live in these small towns, they don't have as much access to health care. And if somebody gets critically ill and they have to be transported without stabilization in the community, that becomes a real issue as well.
So I want to pick on a very positive thing I think you had brought up several times. It's preventative care. You're talking about one of the reasons this will bring back money to Abilene Memorial is when people in your community are healthy, they can go back to work. We're not saying will go back to work. We're saying they can, because frankly, it's not your job or mine to see that they will go back to work. But it is your job to give them a chance to be healthy so they can go back to work. So that's where we're building our fence line here. If your people have good preventative care, they can go back to work and are far more likely to choose that route than if that nagging knee, ankle, back, headache, internal problem they deal with every day. That's just that straw on the camel's back that makes me want to stay home and not go do something. So I think that's common sense. People can understand that.
Yes, sir, I agree. I did participate, if I could talk about it at the moment, in a research study down at Wichita State University.
Right. Tell us about it.
And in the room with me were other hospital CEOs, CNOs, but as well psychologists and social workers. And behind the double mirror were officials from the state of Kansas, including the Kansas Hospital Association. And so as a result of that, we talked about our different areas and what CanCare expansion would mean to us. I think the most impactful one for me was when I heard about the psychologist and social workers point of view as they work with people that expanded Medicaid would save lives. And here's why. Because their people are unhealthy and they can't afford care, and they try to do as much as they can for them. But these people are in the trenches. They witness this every day. And they said when they see people get healthy, people go back to work. They want to work, but they're sick. And they need preventive health care. Emergency room visits for critical care do not make people well. They only solve an immediate issue. And so they said many of their people will die without expansion of Medicaid, and I have no reason to doubt them. They're the guys that are in the trenches, guys and girls that are in the trenches. They're talking about this every day, and I think that's the most important thing that I could say for me is that we need to absolutely take care of people. And if we can at least do it in a way that they can feel good about getting preventive care and not be too proud to come in but stay sick at home and can't work, if we can fix that, why wouldn't we? You know, that would be my question, I guess, is why would we not fix that?
I'm going to summarize some things, and you keep me on track. So we have a proposal in Kansas, Medicaid expansion. We have dollars leaving Kansas through our tax payments on our payroll.
To date, $3.2 billion.
$3.2 billion wanders up to Washington, D.C., and it one little corner over there where they stacked $3.2 billion. One little tiny corner over there. But still, what we're looking at is having through the rules that exist in that program nationwide and the rules back to states, if we expand the group of people, about 150,000 we think in the state of Kansas that fit the new guidelines, we will be getting monies back from that we weren't previously getting monies from the feds back to Kansas through CanCare, available to local hospitals who provide that care, of which you are the director of ours. So we'll be getting monies in Abilene Memorial because we're taking care of people. The taking care of people, as a healthcare professional, you're telling me that this enables us to move to preventative care and instead of emergent care, emergency room care, and in higher percentages. And over time, that increases the opportunity for people to be healthy and go back to work. And that's where the real number starts to show up, isn't it? When they go back to work.
Absolutely.
They have a payroll check now, and their little tax dollars are going up to Washington too. That's when the cycle's complete. But we can't get to that piece of the opportunity until we go through the pieces you're describing to us as Medicaid expansion. Fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Long statement.
Yeah. No, it's the right summation of it. That's
okay.
In a nutshell, that's the scenario that we're in.
Okay. So let's talk about the business of healthcare.
Okay.
Fort Scott and Independence, 2 of those 5 that went out, because they were revenue positive.
Right.
Right, so we look at that, and you know we have our favorite accountant in the room over there. But so it's hard to fathom why you would go out of business when you're revenue positive, and that seems to be a stable trend. Well, they were members of a larger organization, and we don't know all the issues there. We don't know about recruitment. We don't know about maybe technology improvements, capital improvements. We don't know that story very well. You and I don't.
No, we don't.
But I'm just bringing that up to say that healthcare as a business is tremendously complicated. It's way more complicated than I buy 100 widgets. For this price, I sell 100 widgets. For this price, I pay my people with the difference in between, and I keep a little called profit. It's much more complicated than that. And I don't think there's anything more capital intensive than healthcare as a business. So I had an x-ray the other day, and I was glad to have that new equipment and young people excited to use it. And I'm tremendously grateful. We have a 16-slice CTI sitting down there, and we have a brand new MRI machine that we got to film the whole making of the room back when they built the new hospital. I'm so glad it's there. Man, I don't know if I'd have wanted to buy it though. As a business guy,
it's expensive.
I mean, how do you buy that kind of stuff? Well, you're in the healthcare business. How do you operate without it?
Yeah.
So, you know, when Joe Q Public says that I'm glad we have a hospital, This is an old New York farmer who told my Uncle Jim after Uncle Jim bought his farm and let him live in his house till the rest of his life for free. And my Uncle Jim would always complain about this one field with this hill. The hill is just like this. It's a drumlin, actually, which is a glacier-caused hill. Yeah. But it's the rockiest place we had. And Uncle Jim would always go to Albert. He's, Albert, what'd you sell me that blankety blank rocky old hill for? And Albert go, the tail goes with the dog, Jimmy, the tail goes with the dog. Well, the tail in healthcare is the cost, a base cost of what is required in this facility to keep people interested in coming here.
Absolutely. It's very high. We run, some years we run more cost than revenue. And on a lucky year, no, I wouldn't say a lucky year, but on a good year, we run a little more revenue than cost. But for a rural critical access hospital, we're at a point where our margins are very small. 85% of hospitals in rural hospitals, 85% of hospitals in Kansas have negative margins. We were very fortunate last year, and I think we're going to see this, hopefully, that we had a slightly positive margin. But if you've seen 1 year, you've seen 1 year. If you've seen 1 month, you've seen 1 month, because they're all different. Right. And we have some hospitals in the state of Kansas, that 17 is to be exact, that are extremely high risk of closure now. We have 30 that are considered financially at risk. So that's a lot of hospitals, and that's a lot of people without health care if we can't do something about it.
Dave gave me the 2-minute mark about 30 seconds ago, so I'm going to ask you the hardest question last, but I think you're going to have a good answer. So if you were sitting across from a local tire shop owner downtown Abilene who's very concerned about young people that work in their facility and opportunity to hire some more so they can expand, and the opportunity to keep those people healthy. All of those things are true, no matter whose shop we're talking about downtown. John Q. business owner. So you're the executive of this business, but you're also the person in town who probably knows the most about Medicaid expansion in Kansas. So is this good for John Q. business downtown Abilene?
Absolutely it is. First of all, it takes the heat off of that owner who does, you know, if this person's at 138% or less of poverty level, it takes the heat off of them having to provide health care for that person, and keeps the business in business, which is really important. This is a win-win for Kansans, in my opinion. We get people healthy, they're able to work, and God knows we don't have enough people to fill some of the jobs we have here. So if we can get people healthy and increase that workforce, guess what it's done for all of us? And we can't pay a $15 an hour minimum wage. It just doesn't compute in small towns. And so if we can help them by providing health care to those people through CanCare expansion, everybody wins.
Harold, I sure thank you. Tackling the hardest subject anybody can tackle on a camera, I think, and that's healthcare, and government involvement in healthcare is a big issue. You've done wonderfully. Thank you for being so transparent, and thank you for sitting with us today.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. We'll do it again?
Well, hope so.
Okay. All right. We appreciate your attendance today. My name is Dennis Weiss. I work for Eagle Communications. This is Harold Courtois over here. He works for Abilene Memorial Health Systems. We wish you a great day.